Okay, right. Right then, we are good to go. I've got some notes, so I'm going to be looking down away from the screen a little bit, so apologies. And like I said, I'm going to throw some questions out. If you want to, you could pop some bits in the chat box just in response to those questions. And maybe if there's any other questions of your own, maybe you could wait until the sort of Q&A at the end, but if not, just pop them in. So just one thing to say is there's, you know, a lot of questions that anyone could ask about food, diet and diabetes. So it may be that you don't have all your questions answered in the following slideshow. Hopefully there'll be time for other questions at the end. But I am also going to let you know, that we are available to talk to patients, whether that's in a group setting or one-to-one. So hopefully there will be an opportunity to have a discussion with a diabetes dietitian if that's what's needed. And also, we do come to Diabetes UK events regularly and other events too. Okay, so I'm wondering, fingers ready, chat box, what have you heard is the best diet for diabetes or for sort of diabetes and losing weight, improving blood glucose? Also, if you've got type 2 diabetes, have you heard anything about remission of type 2 diabetes and the diet that might be good for that?
No.
Interested, So feel free to type away. So I am going to be talking about, obviously, some of the diets, maybe all of the diets that you're thinking about, who knows? But I'm going to pick out the ones that have got, a bit of a buzz around them, maybe some really good evidence around them, and the things that just, people are doing really. So we're going to talk about that in more detail. I am going to touch on type 2 diabetes just initially because thinking about weight loss and remission, and I appreciate not everyone here today has got type 2 diabetes, but it is important just to touch on that and thinking about losing weight to possibly achieve remission. Okay, so the other thing to say is the diets that I will describe today are fine, whether you've got type 1 diabetes or type 2. Yeah, so what have we got here? Low carb and no sugar. Phone number, direct study, time restricted eating. Yes. The good news is I'm going to talk about all of this, so that's helpful. Keep an eye on the time as well. Okay. So, I mean, in a nutshell, this is what I'm going to sort of give you a bit more information on and more besides. What do you think the arrows could be hinting at? Some of these diets have got a more gentle arrow, sort of sloping down. And then some of them have got a arrow going right down. So it's just alluding to sort of the rate at which someone might lose weight, whether that's rapid or more gradual weight loss.
Sorry, have you changed the slide?
I did, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Can anyone see the slide?
No.
Oh, no.
No.
Okay,
No.
don't worry. Let's see if it helps, if I make it a big screen.
It says
Maybe if I press the
screen sharing, which is a good sign.
Any difference if I press the button on the screen? You can still just see the first slide.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me. Any different now?
No. No.
Oh, crikey. Okay. I'll just stop sharing for a minute
And kind
and
of
maybe just try again.
yeah.
I'm not sure that is there some sort of knack to moving the slides. Can you see the slide and my note pages at the end now?
No.
Just
No,
the slide.
I can't see the slide
I
anymore.
can't see the slide now.
What's going on? Oh, guys, I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on here. I mean, I'm just doing what it's asking. Share screen. It's not even coming up now. Right. One moment.
Can you help?
I'm just going to open it up again.
So I think it's
See if that helps. I've closed it.
a PowerPoint thing on that PC. I don't think we've got any. We can't. We've got no.
Share screen. What can you see now? Oh no.
Well, if you want to email them, we could show them, and you could just say next slide, please.
That's fine. Let's do that.
Yeah. You'll have to make me host, though, I think.
Okay. So I'll email it to the Sheffield Diabetes UK.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to do it from my personal email at the moment because
It's all right. I won't share it.
in. Okay. Sending now. So it says it's sent. And oops. Technology.
Yeah.
When it works.
I've made you host, Lindsay.
Okay, that's great. It's not quite come.
Probably because it's so big.
Yeah.
Oh goodness.
This is like Google says they can do anything, so we'll just put that to the test. Don't worry.
Google's all right. It's the rest of us.
Shirley, I didn't want to say that.
I fell at the first hurdle, but you know, no training. What can you expect?
Don't worry. Don't worry.
Any joy yet?
No.
I guess the other way could be Dropbox or something.
Oh God.
I know exactly. That's asking too much.
Carly,
Yeah.
but when you first shared the screen, it came up really like the complete screen, and then you kind of added the chat box and all the faces.
Yeah.
And I wonder whether it can't move on from that. Are you able to share
Okay,
screen
yeah.
and get rid
Yeah,
of
rid
So
of
the,
the
you could see all of that, could you? Not just my slides.
initially it went really big, and then
Yeah.
when you added chat box and the faces, it shrunk down. So that you can
Okay,
try
I mean, I'm happy to try it again.
just whilst you're waiting for the email.
After we made host again, Lindsay.
Oh, hang on a sec.
I can make myself host.
I'm just checking spam. No, you're not in there.
Okay, let's try and, while we wait, like you say, that's a good idea. Try making me host again and I'll
Okay, yep.
try sharing my screen.
Yeah, okay, I've done that.
Okay. I don't understand. It's not even there for me to look at. There it is.
Oh,
Can you see that first slide again?
No.
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 It says I'm sharing.
It says you're sharing, but there's nothing there.
So all we can see is a
Black.
black screen with it says Carly has started screen sharing. So if you try clicking on your slides and see if they come up.
I mean, I can see the slides. They're up.
Yeah.
And when it says share screen, I've selected to share
Ask Carly to
to share the slides. I've pressed on the slides, but
That's not share.
try and share something else other than the PowerPoint, just to see if
Okay.
anything else is sharing.
Carly, can you what David just said?
yeah. Let's have a little look. I don't.
It's on the sharing selector.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, Carly, your slides have come.
Oh. And if I press the button, can you see the others? What do you mean they're coming in the email? I'm now sharing a web page. Can you see that?
No.
Carly, have you still got the chat box up and all the pictures? Everyone's cameras.
Okay. Oof.
You can click that or click that.
What's the green one?
Okay, let me just attempt to get rid of the chat. Try sharing again.
Carly, if you want to make me host, I should be able to do it now because I've got it.
Okay. You can't see the screen I'm sharing then?
No.
Okay. I just closed everything else. So that didn't work. So I'll make you host.
It's just computers. I just think they're not as smart as we like to think they are.
Yeah, I like that phrase.
Okay, I am the
Hi.
host. Okay. That one. But I have not shared screen. Oh, it's a daft bat, isn't it? Right. Can everyone see?
Oh yes, I can see that now.
See the first one again, yeah.
Try and see the next slide.
Okay.
And if you press the next one now, Lindsay, let's see if it works.
Yay!
It does.
Yes,
Yeah.
great.
As long as that
So I'm just going to look if I can just see the chat as well. Ah, yes.
So,
I best talk fast then, hadn't I?
thank you. If you just shave your head shut, Carly, and then say next slide, please, I'll be happy with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So basically what we were saying was, what have you heard might be the best diet for diabetes, for losing weight, possibly for remission, to help glucose levels. And the good news is everything that has come up in the chat box, I am going to touch on in this talk. The next thing I was saying was, obviously you can see a list of different dietary approaches to losing weight, and those arrows were really just hinting at the rate of the weight loss that we might expect, whether it would be more gradual over a longer period of time or more rapid. So what I'd like to share with you is that the latest evidence tells us that no one approach is superior for weight loss, particularly when we're looking at around 12 months. So it might be that the better question is, what approach appeals most to me? You might want to think about the pros and cons of each approach, and that's, what I'm going to sort of touch on really in this talk. The other thing then that I was saying was that there is evidence that some people can achieve remission of type 2 diabetes with weight loss. But obviously not everyone who has got type 2 diabetes, and not everyone might be thinking about remission as their goal. We know there's lots of other benefits to losing weight. I'm going to touch on that as well. So, well, let's do that now. Next slide, please. If we just think about really what are the benefits of losing weight, and the benefits of losing around 5% body weight. So this is for all of us. It would be lower blood glucose levels and a lower HbA1c, so that average measure of glucose control. That feeds into a smaller, reduced risk of diabetes complications. It can reduce your risk of heart disease, lowers your cholesterol levels, improve mental health, better sleep, feeling more energetic. And often what we'll see is, losing weight can mean less medication, whether that's oral medication or insulin. So just before we look at some of those dietary approaches to weight loss, let's just touch on weight loss and remission for type 2 diabetes. Next slide, please. Lindsay. Thank you. So this is just to give you a definition of what we mean when we talk about remission of type 2 diabetes. So we'd be looking at that blood result, the average, over the past 2 or 3 months. So that's from the bloods taken from your arm. And we'd see that it would be below 48. It would stay there for at least 6 months, and you were achieving that in type 2 diabetes without the need for any diabetes medication. Some people do talk about reversal. I mean, you can call it what you want, and maybe that's a bit more motivating, just using that word. It's just that we know the evidence suggests that weight regain can result in diabetes, type 2 diabetes coming back. So we tend to think of it more as remission rather than reversal. And just a little note, if a person were to achieve remission, because we haven't got lots of long-term data about sort of the risks of, say, complications of diabetes, even in remission, you would still sort of have your yearly diabetes checks, like your eye screening and your feet check. because we just want to make sure that you're staying well and that your risk of any problems linked to diabetes is as low as it can be. So you would still attend for those checks. And I guess the other thing that I'm just going to say, and probably just be echoed throughout the talk, really is just that it is really helpful and sensible to think about talking to someone like your doctor, your GP, practice nurse, a member of your diabetes healthcare team, if you were thinking about making any drastic changes to your diet, particularly because it can have implications around your diabetes treatment, whether that's as you start your new diet or later on. So let's just take a quick look, next slide please, at one source of some evidence for remission in type 2 diabetes, which is actually one approach that anyone could take to losing weight if you wanted to. And I think this has come up in the chat. So it was the DIRECT study. So I'll just let you have a little read of the slide while I just tell you some other little nuggets of info. So it was a randomized controlled trial, and this type of evidence offers the most reliable evidence on the effectiveness of an intervention. In this case, it was replacing the food that you eat with meal replacement products, which would lead to a big reduction in your overall daily calorie intake to around 800 calories a day to promote rapid weight loss. And that was sort of measured against another group of people that were sort of doing the usual things that someone might do to lose weight, thinking about small changes to your diet and exercise. So it would be 800 calories a day from formulated, nutritionally complete meal replacement products. And what we've discovered with this study is that the main predictor of remission in type 2 diabetes is weight loss. And as you can see there, remission is linked to a drop in the fat levels in the pancreas and the liver. The insulin producing cells recover, and this continues, providing that the fat is not allowed to accumulate. So that's when we think about, you know, at some point it could be possible, depending on how much weight you regain, that the diabetes could come back. This is a significant change in a person's usual way of eating and a big drop in calorie intake. So this is definitely an approach where it would be best to have support, and you would need to consider sort of talking about this with someone before you make any changes, because it's really likely that you're going to need to make some changes to your medication. Okay, the other thing to say is that there are different approaches to weight loss. We're going to look at them. And it's not about the rate at which you lose the weight. It's not to do with the speed. It's about how much weight you lose if we're thinking about remission, which I appreciate not everyone will be. Next slide, please. So the other thing just to say, again, another benefit of making sure you're talking to people, healthcare professionals, about things like this is because it is really worthwhile having a discussion around the pros and cons, the benefits, and weighing it up, and also thinking about each individual person and anything else that they've got going on in their lives, or their health conditions, for example, because there is an exclusion criteria for some of these more drastic sort of changes to food intake. Even though this is a short-term intervention for 12 weeks before you gradually reintroduce food, it's really important to be thinking about, is this the right approach for me personally? So like I said, it's all about weight loss, getting the fat out of the liver and the pancreas, and then that special function of those cells in the pancreas making insulin can return to normal. And what we've seen is it's around 15 kilograms that tends to give the best chance of remission. It's not to say that everyone could achieve remission. So other indicators that someone might be more successful in achieving remission would be having a shorter duration of diabetes. So like doing this the sooner the better after diagnosis. having a lower HbA1c, that average measure of your sort of diabetes control, and taking fewer diabetes medication. So 15 kilograms is around 2.5 stone. And I guess the study also showed that that's the best way you might achieve remission, but you know, you want to aim for at least 10 kilogram weight loss. So about 1.5 stone. And like I said, it would, you know, the ideal time window would be in the first 6 years after diagnosis. Now, the good news is for those people with type 2 diabetes that are thinking about remission as a goal, because not everyone will be. Next slide, please. The NHS has decided to trial this approach to losing weight and supporting people to aim for remission. So it's thinking about improving blood glucose control, reducing diabetes-related medication, and potentially achieving remission. And it's a similar setup to what was, you know, what we did in the Direct study. And the good news is South Yorkshire and Bassetlaw is one of the areas where patients could fit the criteria to be supported in this way. Oh, I hope you can hear me. Kettle's boiling, apologies. So some of the criteria, just to let you know, for example, would be aged 18 to 65, type 2 diabetes for less than 6 years, and a body mass index over 27, or over 25 if you're from an ethnic minority group. You get year-long support. You get support to be more active after the short-term meal replacement sort of phase, because what we know is that ongoing support and increasing physical activity for anyone who's lost weight is really, really important. So that's really exciting. The referral can be made by your GP or advanced nurse practitioner, and that might be in liaison with sort of a diabetes dietitian, sort of working together. There's certain obligations that the referring needs to fulfill just to make sure that you're getting all the support you need, and that might involve a discussion with a diabetes dietitian in the early days. So, exciting stuff. Next slide, please. And just to let you know, there is quite a bit of information in these slides, and towards the end, I'm sort of signposting you to different places where you could get more information. So I'm happy to make this available. Don't feel like you need to scribble down that long website address. You know what I'm saying? You'll be here all day. So Diabetes UK, the charity website, has got a really good page all about remission in type 2 diabetes, some videos from people's own experience. There's also an information prescription. There's a few different ones actually, but there is one for remission. So you might be interested in that if you've got type 2 diabetes. I'm hoping that there is someone with type 2 diabetes in the audience today. That'd be great. Otherwise, I'm waffling on inappropriately anyway. Next slide, please. So the main man, Professor Roy Taylor, who ran the Direct study, has got his own website, and it's full of helpful information. So it's a really good resource to have a nosy at. And if you look just there, you can see some tabs along the bottom: public information, background, Direct, la la la. So you would just dip in and out of those tabs. There's plenty of information there. Whew, I am talking a little bit fast because we started late, so I'm hoping that the pace is okay. I'm just trying to make sure we have time to fit everything in. Next slide, please. So what we're going to be looking at in a bit more detail is losing weight in one way. A lot of people, I suppose, tend to start losing weight, looking at calories, maybe following a low-fat diet, whether you're calorie counting or just making some small changes, and all of those changes sort of build up to promote that weight loss. We're going to look at low carb. We're going to look at intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating. We're going to look at very low carb, very low calorie. That's what I've just talked about. And the last one is weight loss surgery, bariatric surgery. Next slide, please. So just before we look at those in a bit more detail, I do just want to focus now for a little on type 1 diabetes and thinking about people that might be changing the diet to help sort of with losing weight, because we know that can mean often less insulin is needed. So you're taking smaller amounts that might help with sort of controlling blood glucose. And obviously we've already seen that there's lots of health benefits for anyone, whether you've got diabetes or not, no matter what type, in losing weight if you're carrying extra weight. So I guess the important thing just to think about for type 1 diabetes, given that the treatment is generally on the whole really different, you're taking 2 different types of insulin to control your diabetes, possibly alongside other diabetes medication. So as weight falls, there's less of you. You're going to need less insulin, basically. So your background, or maybe you might hear it described as basal insulin, we would expect that you need less. And in the longer term, you might even notice that your insulin for carbohydrate, your ratios need to be reduced as your weight comes down. So it is important, we know this, to check blood glucose levels regularly, to consider adjusting insulin doses following Daphne guidelines. Thinking about hypos, well, really, if there's too much insulin circulating in your bloodstream, it can lead to hypos, it can drive hunger, and it can also stop you losing weight. So another good reason to be keeping an eye on your glucose levels, thinking about hypofrequency and making adjustments to your insulin. It's all going to help you go in the right direction. The other thing, I guess, is, we know activity is really helpful when it comes to weight. So if you can plan ahead for activity and you know some of the ways you can adjust insulin to help you be active and avoid hypos, again, that's another big tool. So it's just thinking about really, perhaps, you've got losing weight as a goal and thinking about if you want any support with that, really. So it's, I guess, focusing on calorie intake as well, obviously. So some of that might involve not over-treating hypos, trying not to have too frequent hypos, and reducing insulin for planned activity. Yeah. Okay, so next slide. So I'm going to just talk briefly about weight loss surgery or bariatric surgery, which is an option for anyone who's got a body mass index BMI of 40 or more, or 35 to 40 if you've got other health conditions like diabetes. There is other criteria as well. In type 2 diabetes, you could be fast-tracked even, and you'd be thinking about if your BMI is over 35 or over. So yeah, there is a pathway for people that are considering weight loss surgery or would like to consider it, and it would be linking in with a weight management service, and I'll touch on that. It's called Live Lighter Sheffield towards the end of the slides. So people with type 2 diabetes with a lower BMI, 30 and up, who've had a recent onset of type 2 diabetes, again, thinking about weight loss surgery then is an option. It is the most effective way for someone with type 2 diabetes to achieve remission. Obviously, rates can vary depending on the type of surgery you've had. You're going to have a rapid improvement in blood glucose levels, even as you start the pre-op diet. But, it's not a quick fix. It's a lifelong change in your food intake, change likely in what you eat and the amount you eat. And there's risks with any surgery. Likewise, some of the surgery means that you can't absorb all the goodness from your food. You need to make sure you're eating a high quality diet, and possibly you might need some supplementation lifelong. Okay, next slide, please. So I guess this is probably one of the most common approaches people might take to losing weight. So whether you're putting numbers to stuff, counting calories, you know sort of where you started from, you're moving to eating fewer calories. Or I guess other people might not count calories, but might make small changes to what they eat or the amount, knowing that, you know, all of those changes when they're working will promote weight loss, and sort of gauging it in that way, really. So up to 600 calories less than usual in a day, you know, and you can generate that from thinking about what you're eating, but also your activity levels. Don't need any special products. It's generally low fat, because fat provides the most amount of calories. So it's a good one to focus on if you're trying to reduce your calorie intake. And it is ideally sort of based on a Mediterranean type diet. So that's something that's cardio protective, protecting your heart health. So there's more of a focus on plant-based foods, whole grains, fruit and veg, olive oil, and fish, oily fish, nuts. Could have some red meat, just, you know, not loads. Not a lot of dairy, not a lot of sugar, not a lot of refined sugars. Yeah. So if we think about any dietary approach to losing weight, it is important to think about the long-term support to maintain any changes that you've made, really, to your diet, to your lifestyle. And we're going to come back to that towards the end of the talk. We're going to think about, okay, I've lost the weight, now what? Again, the other thing I've already mentioned is thinking about being active to support weight loss and weight maintenance. So again, I am going to pick up on that towards the end of the talk. Next slide, please. Drum roll, low carb. I think this is what a lot of people are interested in. I am also going to talk about very low carb. So again, this, I mean, as it says there, we put numbers to it. You don't have to put numbers to it, but that's just one way we can define it, by looking at the grams of carbohydrate eaten in a day. It's not like Weight Watchers though, where you're saving up all your points. You're not going to have carbs all day and then suddenly you're going to eat 130 grams, because that would lead to a big change in your blood glucose, and which might be really hard to manage. So I'm going to show you a bit more what that might look like at a meal, because you'd basically be, you know, breaking that amount of carbohydrate into smaller chunks over the day. It is the standard recommended approach in type 2 diabetes, but it's a really good approach for anyone who's thinking about, what am I doing now? What changes could I make that might be really easy without me having to make drastic changes? I'm still eating a bit of everything, but I'm just tweaking the balance on my plate, and that's going to help me lose weight. If you're reducing your carbohydrate intake though, and carbs put glucose in the blood, you're also going to see less glucose in your bloodstream. And in type 1 diabetes, that would just mean you're taking smaller amounts of your quick-acting insulin. So this amount of carbohydrate, there's a bit of a range. It's flexible, it's, you know, variable. But even just thinking about the top end of that, 130 grams of carbs, for a lot of people, that could look like half what you might usually get in a day. So again, you know, it's kind of helpful to have an idea where you want to get to, but even before you get there, you're really likely to notice some benefits. If you're able just to nudge your carbohydrate intake down towards that, that's a really good goal. So with this approach, a lot of people will lose weight, likely to be more gradual, could be rapid for some. You'll notice less swings in your blood glucose in type 2 diabetes. You'll see less glucose in your blood because you've reduced your carbohydrate intake. And obviously, as the weight comes down, that in itself will lower blood glucose levels, because you're improving in type 2 diabetes how your insulin can work. And I guess, you know, generally people find it's an easy approach to take because it sort of just fits into normal life, really. And because it's not overly restrictive, you can just do it forever if you want. So let's have a little look what this actually looks like. Next slide, please. One example. Put numbers to it. You don't have to put numbers to it, because actually a lot of the time, and I'll show you in a couple of slides time, you could just be eyeballing your plate to have a rough idea of how much carbohydrate you might be getting when you put the food on your plate. Obviously in type 1 diabetes, when you're counting your carbs and matching it with your quick acting insulin, and that's a massive tool to help you control your glucose levels. The more accurate you can be putting numbers to it, carb counting, the better. Bit less necessary in type 2 diabetes, depending on your treatment. This approach is summarised in our Sheffield Teaching Hospital's diet sheet, patient leaflet, whatever you want to call it, designed by us, Sheffield Diabetes Dietitians, called Carb Smart. You can Google STH patient information and it'll come up. There's a search bar. But again, I will provide information about all of this that you can access so you don't have to remember it all. Obviously, it's aimed at type 2 diabetes, but there's, you know, you don't have to just have type 2 diabetes to be able to adopt this approach. Now, I did get some questions just in preparation for this talk. So one of the questions was to do with glycemic index, GI, low GI. I'm just going to touch on that really briefly in the next slide. So next slide, please. I guess the other thing just to say about this approach is that often people find they can keep up with the small changes that they've been making, because you're still able to have a little bit of everything and make those changes gradually over time and just keep them going. Now, yeah, that's right. Okay, so evidence does support the use, the benefit of choosing lower glycemic index carbohydrate foods for type 2 diabetes, particularly. There's a bit less evidence in type 1 diabetes, but we definitely see people tell us how, and we can see it. For example, if someone was using Libre, that it can help sort of flatten the profile in blood glucose after you eat the food. The other thing, because again, there was a question about this, in type 1 diabetes, when you take quick acting insulin, the other thing that helps prevent a spike in blood glucose after eating and injecting quick acting insulin is the timing that you inject the insulin. Your quick acting insulin can take up to 15 minutes to start working. So the recommended time to inject it is 15 minutes before you start eating. That can make a big difference in flattening your profile after food, which you might never notice. You might notice if you use Libre and you're scanning your glucose levels. Okay, so chat box, a go-go. How much of your plate do you think most people might fill with carbohydrate foods generally? All the plate and then put the other stuff on top? I don't know, 3/4, half, a third, less? What do you reckon? If you're awake and you want to put something in the chat box, go for it. How much carbs do you reckon goes on the plate? Half. Are we all agreeing half? Any other takers? Yeah. Okay, next slide. Well, I guess it can vary basically. And the goal would just be more about reducing carbs, filling up more on vegetables, still having some protein. But the final picture there in the middle at the bottom is really representing this approach, lower carbohydrate, this carb smart approach. So having about 30, maybe to 40 grams of carbohydrate at a meal time if you were putting numbers to it, might look roughly like a quarter of your plate. That's the standard recommended approach for type 2 diabetes. We want to aim to reduce carbs. You might notice, you know, significant improvements in your glucose levels and a reduction in your weight before you get there. It can depend on your starting point. And any reduction that you can make is going to be helpful. So let's now think about a very low carb diet, and ooh, what's that going to look like? Because now I've got a quarter of my plate filled with carbohydrates. What's a very low carb diet going to look like? What do you think are the main foods that a person might be eating if they choose very low carb? Chat box, please. So what are the main foods you think might make up what goes on your plate if you're going very low carb? Salad, definitely. Protein, yep. Okay. Oh, we've got some others yet. Okay, yeah. So next slide, please. Let's have a little look at a plan. So very low carbohydrate, officially, again, most people just approach this really flexibly and they don't tend to keep to thinking about these definitions and the numbers. Or it would be a diet that's got less than 50 grams of carbohydrate in it in a day. So what have we got here? Chia seed breakfast, pot, berries, meat, fish salad. We haven't got any carbs. Nuts, tea, big bit of fish, vegetables. Oh, we haven't had rice. We've swapped it for cauliflower rice and a bit of milk and tea. Next slide, please. Probably looking a bit more like this, which is really what you've said. So well done. Next slide, let's have a little look at a bit more info about this then. So generally, most people, this is a big change in how you eat what you eat. It's a significant restriction to a big part of what usually makes up your meal. It's definitely associated with rapid weight loss. Evidence is suggesting that, you know, you might have a bit more weight loss initially than some of the other approaches, but in the long term, we see that in terms of weight loss, there isn't one approach that is better than the other. So I guess, you know, do you want to lose weight quickly? Nice kickstart can be really motivating, can't it? Or are you happy just to lose weight a bit more gradually and maybe with less significant changes to what you normally eat? So in type 2 diabetes, obviously when your pancreas is still making its own insulin, if you then remove most of the carbohydrate from your diet, it's basically giving your pancreas, where the cells are that make insulin, a little breather. So you will have less glucose getting in your blood because you're not eating a lot of carbs, and your pancreas will have a little breather and everything will start to sort of work a bit better. So even before you lose weight, you're going to see significant changes in your glucose levels as soon as you start eating less carbs, really. So yeah, for some it can feel like a big change, just not something you can keep to in the long term. For others, just adapting your meals, you know, others find it fits into everyday life and routine pretty easily. Next slide, please. Does have some short-term side effects, not gonna lie. Absolutely gonna need advice around diabetes medication and possibly other medication, for example, blood pressure, before you start this diet. And I'll come back to that because it's really important. I'll come back to it towards the end. And that's, again, just echoing the need to have a conversation with a healthcare professional before you undertake any drastic change to your diet. And again, thinking about the other sort of significant change to diet to help promote weight loss, thinking about the low calorie diet, where you might substitute food for 12 weeks for a low calorie meal replacement sort of program. You know, we do need to approach it cautiously, depending on each individual and whatever else could be going on for that person. So again, it is really important to have a discussion with someone before you start thinking about undertaking a diet like this. So the other thing, again, obviously I've mentioned medication and I'm going to come back to it, but I guess for some people that is another reason to approach a diet like this. I could stop or at least reduce some of my diabetes medication. So it's these sorts of things that individuals might be thinking about when they're thinking about what approach might they want to try, what might be suitable. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm gonna not read out all my notes. Next slide, please. Okay, intermittent fasting or time restricted eating. Don't know if you're familiar with this much. Again, quite popular, plenty of resources out there. I'll give you a heads up on some of them. But really, we're looking at 5-2. So on 2 days a week, you reduce your calorie intake to around 25%. And on the other days, you're not especially counting calories. So I guess, you know, some people might think, oh, well, kind of just feels like I'm dieting for 2 days a week. So that's nice. The other option, time restricted eating, where you might just give yourself an 8-hour window for food. Again, some people sort of say they like having the boundaries and they know what hours they can eat and can't eat. And it works, yeah. So again, depending on your lifestyle and what approach you take, it can be something that can be easily fitted into everyday life. Blood glucose levels will improve as your weight falls. May promote rapid weight loss, probably more likely a gradual weight loss over a bit longer time. And I guess, when you're not eating in the day or on your fasting days, you are gonna immediately see lower blood glucose levels. So this approach is all about the whole fed and fasted state. So where we might be in the fed state, we're using glucose as our main source of fuel, versus when we're in a fasted state, we're going to be burning fat as a source of fuel. Next slide, please. So again, thinking about when you are on your fast days, or perhaps depending on your diabetes treatment, if it's obviously still working when you're not eating food, there may be a need to get some guidance around what can I do with my diabetes medication when I'm not eating, when I'm fasting, or on my fast days. So I guess for some people that could be another level of complexity that could put them off this approach. Who knows? So again, it's important to speak to someone and get some advice around that if you need to. I guess if you have an understanding around how you can adjust your diabetes medication, probably easier in type 1 diabetes, then you've got the flexibility to do it if you know how to. Okay, next slide. Very important. Take extra care. Diabetes medication. Insulin and glycoside increases the risk of a person having a low blood glucose, so hypoglycemia. So doses may need to be reduced depending on the approach that you take, whether that's before you start undertaking the change in diet or later as the weight comes down. If you take an SGLT2, for example, dapagliflozin, canagliflozin, some people with type 1 diabetes may take this. Yeah, I think. But it's more likely that we'd see it in type 2 diabetes. So we call them flozins for short. There is a risk of ketosis. That's going to be associated with, for example, the fasting days, or the low calorie diet, the meal replacement approach, and the very low carb diet. Because once carbohydrate intake goes below 50 grams in a day, there's a higher chance of ketones, and this medication increases the risk of that. Ketones in the blood at high levels can be dangerous and could even be fatal. So again, it's just to stress that depending on your diabetes treatment, you might need changes to your medication before you start the diet. Never mind once you start losing the weight and you're on the diet. Keep going, keep going. Okay, so what happens after you've lost the weight? Next slide, please. Well, you know, plenty of people say, you know, losing weight was the easy bit. The hardest bit is keeping it off. Everyone's different though. What we do know is important is long-term support. And that might be something that you can access from time to time from members of your healthcare team, but it might be more apt to be thinking about creating that bigger support bubble. That's a bit COVID, isn't it? So whether that's talking to other people that are losing weight, talking to friends and family, letting them know what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. Could be commercial weight loss groups. It can be really helpful to track your weight, exercise, diet, thinking about why do you want to do this? What's the benefit of doing it? Also, I guess, thinking about, okay, something might have gone off track. How can I get back on track? The other thing is, at this stage, we know it's really important to be more physically active. It really helps with weight maintenance. So with that in mind, I'm going to touch on that a little bit now. What does anyone else think is a benefit to being active? So I've just described how it's really important in controlling your weight, especially when you've lost weight and you want to maintain that weight loss. What are some of the other benefits that you know of being active? Feel free to type in the chat box. Yeah, mood is better, absolutely. Healthier heart, yeah, definitely. Better sleep, better mood, muscle growth, yeah. So loads of really good reasons to be active. Not gonna lie, been a little bit difficult over the past year, especially if you've been shielding. The good news is there is help out there, and I'm going to mention some of it now. So if we go to the next slide, just got a little summary about some of the benefits of being active, but you've touched on some of them. So it can make you more sensitive to insulin. So you'll get lower glucose levels. If you inject insulin, you'll inject less. Lowers your blood pressure, cholesterol, protects your heart health. Lowers your average, your HbA1c. Yeah, okay. So thinking about how most of us might have found it more difficult to be active in the past year with lockdown and the pandemic and everything. What we're thinking when we think about activity is it doesn't have to be some sort of I'm going to the gym and I'm going to go 5 days a week, and or I'm going to go to that exercise class that I've been thinking about for a year. It doesn't have to be formal exercise. It's just getting up and moving more. Does anyone have any tips? Is there anything you do to sort of incorporate moving more in your day-to-day life? So even if you're at home or at work, has anyone got any top tips you could put in the chat box? Ways you can move more, even if you're at home or like in an office. I mean, for example, I could have attempted to stand up whilst giving this presentation, but I didn't. I chose to sit down. I'm going to blame that I haven't got a good place to put the laptop on that. But I've got a little dog, so rain or shine, I've got to go out. Got some here, let's see, housework, yeah, gardening, walking to work, absolutely, yeah. Let's look at some more top tips. You might laugh at some of them, I don't know. Next slide, please. Yeah, walk to work, plenty of breaks, yeah. Get up and move away from the computer if you've got a desk-based job. So top tips, try and make it part of your routine. I mean, it's the same with a lot of things, taking your medicine, even checking your glucose level. If it's got some sort of framework to it, maybe you attach it to other things that are already established. It's really easy for it to become part of your routine. So whether you pick certain times or days, it's got to be something that you enjoy. Start small. You don't have to, like I said, get that gym membership like I did, sign up for a year and then realise that I could just do loads of stuff at home. And then I kind of really haven't gone to the gym, so that was a bit of a waste of money. Walking on the spot, waiting for the kettle to boil, brushing your teeth, build it up to running on the spot. What about squats as you brush your teeth? Listening to podcasts or audiobooks, oh yeah, can make walking more enjoyable. Yeah, so is there something else you can incorporate into that activity when you're moving more that'll just make it more enjoyable? Tidying up, maybe make several trips up and down the stairs when you're doing your tidying rather than dancing. Yeah, I like dancing. Okay, next slide please. We're nearly there, and then we've got some time for questions, so that's good. So there is a lovely new booklet, free, from Diabetes UK, Your Guide to Moving More When You've Got Diabetes. Another one all about you're stuck at home, you might be shielding, we can't go out, we're in lockdown. How can we move more at home? I mean, there's plenty out there. People have trackers on the phone or on the watch. NHS Couch to 5K, so you're building up to 5K gradually. And, you know, there's a really helpful scheme in Sheffield, what you can see there, SPAs, where you can get support with being active. Maybe you're stuck for ideas or you've got other health conditions, even your diabetes, that just maybe mean you're not feeling particularly confident to do it, or there's barriers. So you can talk to an exercise specialist really that can help you think about what your goals are. So you basically get a little bit of a personal trainer for a couple of occasions. You can even take a buddy and they'll just explain all the different options that are available to you. So that's a good one. Next slide, please. Whew. Okay, so this hasn't really been mentioned yet, but it is another thing that's really important. Like I said, you might be able to try something in the short term and get that weight off. But, you know, have you got a history maybe of, you know, things then just slide back, or you just go back to what you used to do? Maybe there's things that, you know, maybe things that you think about in relation to food and weight, or things you feel. Don't just eat because we're hungry. So it's really important to be thinking about what's going on in your head and the impact that that can have on, for example, your food choices and your weight, because if you're maybe not addressing those things, you might stay in this sort of cycle of losing weight and gaining weight. So with that in mind, as long as nothing's changed, there is another diabetes dietitian called Alison who will be giving a presentation for this Sheffield group in June, all about sort of food and emotions. So watch this space. Next slide, please. So I'll whiz through these next slides because, like I said, I'll be able to give you this in another format so you can have a little nosy yourself. Next slide. Very busy slide. Whoa. basically there's loads of books, whether it's a cookbook, whether you want to count your carbs, different leaflets, introductory leaflets, meal plans, books, Life with Diabetes, Roy Taylor, the direct professor. There's, next one please, next slide. There's different commercial programs that offer low calorie diets. It's a total diet replacement. There's food-based approaches to that. There's really good value in support groups, so Weight Watchers, Slimming World. There's things you can get on your app. You might have to pay. Next slide, please. Plenty of books, plenty of apps, checking calories. IAPT, last one there on that slide, improving access to psychological therapy. You can Google that. If you may be a person that might seek comfort in food, for example, at times of stress, you might eat more and maybe the food choices you make aren't helpful at times of stress, then actually thinking about doing the stress control online course with IAPT can help you learn more about managing stress without needing to sort of get comfort from food. So that could be a really good option if maybe that's something that's going on for you. Next slide, please. And the other thing I wanted to just make you aware of, and you can self-refer, hello, that's good news, but you know, a healthcare professional could refer you. If you're thinking that you might like more of the approach that a lot of people might take to losing weight, thinking about fat, thinking about low fat options, planning meals, tweaking the balance on your plate to reduce your calorie intake. So learning more about healthy eating, learning more about the food choices that can help you lose weight, and starting to build up making small changes, then Live Lighter Sheffield is a really good resource that you can access for free through a healthcare professional, or you can refer yourself online. There's 12 weekly sessions. At the moment, it's over video call. It's a rolling program. So if you missed a week, you'd easily be able to pick it up because it's just rolling. And you know, initially there's 12 weekly sessions covering topics that you can see there, but you get support for a year. So you'll have follow-up at 6 months and 12 months. And I think I have heard how there might be extra little things around and about over that year, because you're going to be sat, you know, listening to these sort of talks with other people that are doing the same thing as you. So it's a really good way of getting peer support. Yeah. Okay, next slide. Last but not least is us diabetes dietitians. So again, talk to us healthcare professionals. You could seek referral to a diabetes dietitian because you've got burning questions about all what we've talked about today and more besides. And there's lots of us, and we're really happy to talk to people that have got diabetes and are thinking about what can I do that might help me improve my blood glucose controls, might help me lose weight, how can I do that and avoid hypos. So plenty of different types of conversations can be had. I won't waffle on as to which dietitian out of this bunch you might see, because we've all got a slightly different referral criteria. The first thing really is just have that conversation, get the ball rolling and ask for a referral. So whether that's the diabetes dietitians like me based at the hospital, but also like me, it is me. I'm your friendly neighbourhood diabetes dietitian working from your GP surgery. So I work as a diabetes specialist dietitian in Healy, plus primary care network. That is Sloane, Beauchief, which used to be Abbey Lane and Totley Rise, Healy Green, Veritas, Sharrow Lane, Therewith, Carfield, Matthews Belgrave and Gleadless. So in that instance, it is only people with type 2 diabetes. Yeah, so basically if you've got type 2 diabetes and you want to talk to a diabetes dietitian and you go to one of those doctors, you know, come and see me. At Sheffield Teaching Hospitals, we can support people with type 2 and type 1 diabetes, and we do have another amazing team of community sort of based dietitians based at Manor Clinic. They do also see some patients with diabetes. The other thing then, also thinking about some of the questions that have come up before, which might be, I guess, a bit more specific around carbohydrate. What amount might I want to aim for, particularly in type 2 diabetes? I'm thinking now, maybe you want to know more about how can I put numbers to it, grams of carbohydrate. We do have carbohydrate awareness groups. At the moment, it's over video call, and it is mostly coming from the diabetes centre at the hospital, but I will also be offering that from your GP surgery. Next slide. I'm exhausted. So unfortunately, I mean, that is the end. And I appreciate we're scheduled to finish at 9. And I think the plan was I would have 20 minutes for questions, but let's just check with Lindsay, perhaps. What's the plan now?
Well, when David and I need a little bit of time to sort out the raffle, because we're until the end of bookings to get everyone, and we've just been to London. So
will we finish late, do you think? Do you want some time for questions and you'll just let me know when you're ready with the raffle, or you've gone on mute for some reason?
If that's okay with Shirley, who's the chair.
Shirley, yeah.
Fine. And
that's fine with me, Lindsay.
It won't just end.
I'm not going anywhere.
So time for questions, and you'll let me know when it's time to be quiet. You'll do the raffle, and then we'll end.
Yeah, that sounds great. That's great for me.
Okay. So if anyone's got any questions for me, feel free to put them in the chat box, or if I can have a view, perhaps where I could. Can you put your hand up on screen in Zoom or anything? I'm not sure you can.
Yes, they can.
So whether you put a virtual hand up on the screen or just wave, bearing in mind I can only see 9 people at the moment, and there's more people. And you've got the chat box option too. But everyone's fed up with listening to me though.
No, definitely not.
Okay. Oh, someone's phone.
Otherwise, we'll just have a nice little.
To wake up.
Otherwise, we'll just have a nice little chat between ourselves while we're waiting. That's fine as well. What if I ask you then a question? I'm certain that you talk about this anyway, but I mean, is there anything else that you think just right now, whilst I'm here, that you would like to have, for example, a presentation about from a diabetes dietitian, or I can't remember what I was going to say. Got something here. I'm going to be hunted down. No problem. Thank you. Yeah, that's fair enough. If anyone has to go, needs to go, that's absolutely fine, because I appreciate being waffling on and we had a slow start.
Oh God, David, I've got it.
How are you getting on, Lindsay?
If you want, we can do the raffle offline.
Yeah, we can do the raffle offline, if that would be okay. So yeah, it won't be as exciting, but we can
We could do a few drum rolls.
we can do that. We've got 5 prizes. David's got this app where it selects numbers, so we can do that, and then the one that gets picked first, we'll offer them the choice of the 5 prizes. In fact, we can do 6, because we've got a Life Tastes Better with Slimming World mug.
Lovely.
It's a lot of willpower, but I finally gave up dieting. So we can have 6 prizes. So shall I tell you what the prizes are?
Go on.
Okay,
Go for
so one of them is a very nice Slimming World mug.
Lovely.
One is a very nice Carex aloe vera hand gel.
Which we all need.
Lovely.
One is the recommended book by today's speaker, Life Without Diabetes by Professor Roy Taylor. Okay, we've got The Compassionate Mind, which was recommended by last month's speakers, by Paul Gilbert. And
Compassionate Mind.
When you've simply had enough, everybody's felt like this at some time. Ginger Vieira is, so she's American, she's a certified diabetes trainer and or educator, and she's got diabetes herself. Very compassionate, very understanding. So that might be useful for anyone who just feels their get up and go has just gone. Yep. And we've also got a very attractive Bayliss and Harding hand and body lotion and body wash.
Very nice.
So if anyone wants to buy some raffle tickets, they're 50p each, and just get in touch.
We'll have some similar prizes next month.
Yeah.
I'm sure you'll be a lot easier than going on Eventbrite for your raffle tickets.
Yeah. So, yeah, really sorry about that, everyone.
No, don't worry about it.
Could I take the opportunity to ask Carly a question? Sorry, I've just thought of one.
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Carly. Thank you very much for the great presentation. I'm just thinking about that Roy Taylor book that you recommended. I've got a copy here, and I was just wondering, if you do go down the meal replacement approach, do you have to think about the sugar content in the brand that you choose? Or does it not matter because you're focusing on the weight loss overall?
In the brand, did you say?
Yeah.
In the type of product that you choose?
Yeah.
They're all pretty much the same. You would want to make sure it's a meal replacement product, because some of the brands have other snack type products. So you'd want to make sure it was the meal replacement one. And yet there's plenty available, whether that's a supermarket owned brand. But they are really, really similar. So they've probably got between 15 and maybe 20 grams of carbohydrate per bottle, for example, per ready-made shake. I don't know what the sugar content is off the top of my head, but it would be the carbohydrate that you'd want to look at. But ultimately, you know, even with little differences between the different products, if you swap food for, it would generally be 3 of those products a day, possibly with some vegetables, salad, and small amounts of fruit, it's generally, even with little differences between products, you're going to get a massive reduction in your calorie intake, and that's going to promote rapid weight loss, and that's the goal of that approach. So that's the one where, you know, people have been supported by, say, practice nurses or dietitians to do it. And there's the pilot in Sheffield. So if you fit the criteria, you could do the pilot. You'd be given the products, you wouldn't need to buy them. If a dietitian was supporting you with that, a diabetes dietitian, because let's say you saw a referral for that purpose, we can do that as well. You would just be buying the products yourself.
Okay. I have to confess, I've snuck in from Leicestershire. I'm not Sheffield at all, but I found you guys on the Facebook page. But thank you very much for your reply. I really appreciate it.
That's fine.
Yeah, and you're very welcome, Kate.
Thank you.
I'm not going to read it out, but I have got a private message. I won't name names, but so it's for a person with type 1 diabetes, and really, I don't even know how I can reply privately. I've tried, but I think that would warrant a discussion with a diabetes dietitian, just one-on-one, for example, in clinic. So, you know, all you need to do is, I mean, we would hope that anyone with type 1 diabetes, we would hope that their care is primarily managed in secondary care. So, for example, at Sheffield teaching hospitals, you might still attend, for example, for your annual screening at your GP practice. But if you're not currently under secondary care and you've got type 1 diabetes, you can request a referral. And if you're not under the care, it's really likely that you would see a diabetes consultant and possibly a nurse. And at some point, you know, you would see a dietitian, or you would at least ask to see a dietitian. Otherwise, just seek a referral to a diabetes specialist dietitian at the hospital. And that can absolutely be arranged for one-to-one support for someone with type 1 diabetes, thinking about weight or diet and, you know, controlling your glucose levels. So, yeah, I hope that kind of answers that person's question in a roundabout way. It's a bit difficult to give specific individual advice in this sort of setting, especially when it's not a quick answer. So just be mindful that, you know, if you do have any questions and you want support, you know, we would like to support you. So it's just about accessing us.
Yeah.
Can I ask something? Hello?
Yeah. Yep.
Hello, can you hear me? It's Carol.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hello. Because with my phone,
Who is it? Because I
see
can't see. I can't see who it is.
It's Carol. Well, it's Carol.
Hi, Carol. I've moved my screen
Hello.
along. Hello.
Yeah, because I'm just on my phone anyway, so I can't see everybody's face.
Oh, okay.
It's just a general. I heard a program on the radio several weeks ago. I think it was called Science Today, and it was somebody talking about people being overweight, and that genetics featured more than they once thought. You know, that lots of people have mutation receptors in the brain. There's something called leptin, which lets you know when you've had enough sort of fat, and some people have mutation, quite more people than they thought have mutations in the brain, which that they it doesn't tell them when they've had enough to eat, you know, so they're tending to be fighting their biology, he said. You know, lots of people are actually fighting their biology. It's not so much their fault. I mean, they can be supported and maybe recognised. And obviously you can't get around it, but what do you think about that? Have you come across that research?
I haven't. I mean, I've definitely heard about I've heard about this, absolutely. There's new research coming out all the time. And some people do think about, you know, what are the other factors that are at play for me and my weight control? And some people do think about if there is a genetic factor. But my experience is that it would be really unusual that a person would ever have the opportunity to discover if they've got a genetic factor at play.
Yeah, yeah.
So I guess until we know more about that and how that could be, you know, made more accessible, and then the benefit of knowing that information, would it mean that there's going to be different approaches that would work over one for that person with the genetic predisposition? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, there are people struggling, you know, and feeling a failure. I mean, I'm sure your approach does help that, you know, it's not entirely their fault. It's not just a case of...
Absolutely, yeah. And I think it is important, you know, recently I've had a discussion with a patient who described like this vicious cycle of losing weight and regaining it. And she's decided that, you know, it's going to be helpful for her not to focus on the weight on the scales, but to think about the other benefits to losing weight, just to try and break that cycle, and just find what works for her. That's the other important thing, you know, what works for each individual. So it's thinking about your goal, whether that's weight on a scale or something different, and really the reasons behind that. And then, you know, trying one approach. If you don't like it, try another.
I don't have a problem with what, you know, I don't have a problem of needing to lose weight. It's just that I know people, you know, lots friends and family do. And sort of psychologically, I'm sure it would help them if it was recognised that there could well be a genetic component that's making life difficult for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And even just with their confidence and being able to think, you know, there's something else going on here. You know, I'm trying my best.
Yeah.
But I'm fighting something else hidden that, you know, people can't see. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Carly. Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome, Kate. Just a message to say Kate's going. So, anything else from anyone, or what are we thinking? Shirley.
Oh yes, it was a very good day.
So thank you very much. But for me, I lost weight, but I didn't do it to bring my blood glucose down. I just went to lose the weight, and it just came down with it. So I'm back in that pre-diabetic stage now. No tablet, but I struggle. I must admit, it is still a struggle.
Yeah, well done. Yeah, you can't sort of. Got to keep your eye on the ball, haven't you?
You have, yeah. People think because you get back in there that you're cured, and you know, you have to keep saying to them, "Well, no, I'm not. If I put weight on, then it, you know,
it could come back. Yeah. Well done. Anyway, that's fab.
Yeah. I haven't had any meds for 2 years, so I've just done it by diet and exercise.
Well done.
In the news brief this month, Frank Frost, who's on our committees, had type 2 for, I think it's over 20 years, and he was on insulin, and he is now off insulin. He's off all the drugs except metformin. So through losing a lot of weight, and after reading Roy Taylor's book, and so his GP is really thrilled. Oh, Carly, you might know. So I don't think Frank will mind me saying, because he appears in films about it. So his GP is Ollie Hart, and they did a film together for the Royal College of GPs conference this year.
Wow.
So Frank,
I've not seen that, no.
Yeah. So Frank's 71, and he says if he can do it, he thinks anyone can.
Yeah.
Wow. And that is so encouraging, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's setting yourself little goals, not too big a goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just starting somewhere, isn't it? Start
Yeah.
small.
It's like climbing a hill. You have to stop sometimes halfway, but then when you get to the top, you haven't stopped. It's like, I'm going to keep on going.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah.
I work a bit. So, yeah.
I think a lot of people have left now. We probably should wind up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Want to thank everybody for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's lovely to see you. And lovely to see you, Carly. Thank you very much.
Oh, and you. Yeah, it's nice to see everyone, and thanks for your comments and questions in the chat box or face to face. And I can see there's some thank you. So thank you very much, because
yes, thank you.
You know, taking time out of your evening and everything. Yeah. Probably see you again soon.
I just took your start, but we got there.
Yeah.
Oh no, goodness me. No. These things happen. Can't control it all, can we?
No.
All right then, we'll have a nice rest of the evening.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.